Welcome, welcome, welcome. July, guys. We're in July already. Can you believe it? I'm delighted to be hosting July 2021's Readings at Home. My name is Ivy Ngeow. I'm an author of novels, short stories, and mini lifestyle guides. I was born and raised in Johor Bahru. Here are three of my published novels: Overboard, Heart of Glass, and Cry of the Flying Rhino. I've just finished the editing stage of my fourth, and I'm writing my fifth novel. They're generally in the literary psychological fiction genre. I live in London, and I love dark, suspenseful fiction with international themes and twists. I gotta have twists. You can connect with me here at writengeow.com. You can email me here, and you can also follow me on my Facebook page. As an author who's performed at readings live in KL at Seksan, as well as readings online, I have to say that this is the showcase of Malaysia's most wanted writers. We have some of the most diverse, innovative, and creative voices the country has produced. Today's lineup includes 5 writers, which I'm very excited about and proud to present. So, let's get on with it. Our guest May Chong is a poet and speculative fiction writer with recent or upcoming work in Strange Horizons, Bending Genres magazine, Fantasy magazine, and Harbour Review. She enjoys bird watching, video games, and awful puns. Her nature-themed chapbook, Seed, Star, Song, is available as part of Ghost City Press Summer 2020 series. Let's hear it from May.
A very good time of day to all our reading listeners. My name is May Chong, and I'll be reading 3 poems, the first of which is about ghosts as civil servants. Sort of. This is Municipal Ghosts. His pension still arrives on the 15th, our nest feathered with bureaucracy, for the service of an esteemed municipal ghost. Even in death, Father is still an ox at the plough, whipped dry and unblinking, respected like he hadn't been for 73 years. For so many years, this street will draw strength from the good bones he passed down to us. Not one pothole or light bulb blown since he left, with a thumbprint of dried blood, a contract to law beyond law, and promises that we would be taken care of, as long as it took, as long as they take from him. Behold the capital, built on skeletons and mud, uninterested in acquiescence. Before they were stone tablets, weren't our ancestors swallowed by this very earth? Did they not slake the soil's thirst? Every year in the 7th month, don't the streets boil and blister, restless? Sometimes the city still screams with collective hunger. Bones break the same way underneath all skin, never enough. But we are taught well, never scream back. No good citizen encourages the cry. No good comes from refusing that last binding contract. When lights snap on, off, hands at odd hours, and potholes open, oozing ulcers, the town council papers over foulness with talismans, dulls air with droning, imported holy waters and appeasements in a minimum of 4 languages. And yet, the word sorry is never said in any of them. Never, you did not dream of this. Never was this dead end considered a way out. Look who they welcome to serve, and who is left alone to die as the dead should. They only want the threats who might turn from the land, run to haunt kinder soil and water. Now they can never leave. They shall never break. Someday, when I go, I leave myself to you, to go with you. Not a city that cannot love all its children, a nation thumbing its flag at second guests. But if you need, then pledge my bloody thumb to any alley under your feet. I will hold wildflowers and quiet for you as long as it takes, as long as they take from me. My second poem is entitled Curse Body, and it's about a creation deity who's not quite happy with the way things are going. There's a content warning for insects and other creepy crawlies here, so if you need to tap out, you can tap out now. This is Curse Body. In some warm place, a heart is fated to become kingfisher, and bones pillars under sky. Body a rich harvest for future sons to reap. Gleaming rivers woven from blood. A left eye sun, a right eye moon. Even a monster's death heralds winged wonders. But look what I am made of. Look what they made me. I will not stoop to pretend I was ever useful. Go, bury my unlovely face away from the sun. I am already tangled with the dark earth, bare fingers bursting with sleek maggots. The gleaming viper emerges from my eyes, unblinking as the sword. See my tongue uncouple from its roots and squirm into hagfish, lamprey, lightning-gutted ribbonworm. Limbs honeycombed with gleaming king cobra eyes, all the better to devour other snakes. Ears shatter with the weight of all words into rag-toothed barnacles. From my collarbones swarm the shrew and weasel, shrill and ravenous. My mouth breeds fire coral, blood breaker with roots. My femurs become unyielding banyan trees, my dirty toes datura blooms, backbones blossom into ipoh and manchineel. See, my nails are touch-me-not cone snails, and centipedes uncoil from my teeth. Guts split and spray flies, a cloud of rove beetles with blistering rage in every drop of ichor. If you dare, now come crush me. Every fallen eyelash erupts into a shrike, every drop of sweat a jade stink bug. Each artery a flatworm, each vein a hawk moth built to part the bloom. Every wild hair a bristling coel, too brown and female for soothing serenades. To who, like I, glass screaming in a feather coat? And my voice, the thing you wished dearly to die, will ring in songs of summer cicadas. Remember what you did. I will laugh last and loudest in the air, the water, the soil that yields only to me. This cursed body belongs to nobody. It leaves the world all things awkward and eerie, fear given legs and bellies. Ode to none, friend to those who have looked into the stadiums of monster teeth and wanted fangs to bear in turn, even once. And my third poem is called I Think the Shrike is Love, and it's based on a love of bird watching. I think the shrike is love, because after father felled the trees and pulled up her crooked perches, she left. All shrikes are female to me in their contained and rasping fury. She left, even from the handful of months she deigns to stay each year. There is nothing to be seen through the empty beauty of now. She became an elsewhere bird for other people who are not me. Her gritty, rip-rattling rage rings out elsewhere. I know she flits from brick to wire in other states and times, tail ticking crisp like a vintage switch, watching with smoky gimlet eye for something to render insensate. But not me. I hear her and miss her time after time after time. The voice is proof enough that she exists, but my eyes sweat and sulk, hungry to see what once was ours. Slowly I reckon that must be enough, that I cannot begrudge the rest of humanity her voice rapping against the world's tin door. Then, after months of copper flashes on neighbors' walls in other households, she's back at mine, in light as if she never stopped taking a place here. I drink in the sight, bitter, battle-painted, dust-sided, 2 stones of hellfire squeezed in a handful of bird. Now I remember the way you came to my door too, and returned, and returned, and returned. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't want to get on the wrong side of our next guest. Civil litigation lawyer turned writer slash actor slash vocalist Tina Isaacs has published numerous short stories, including achieving runner-up for the D.K. Dutt Memorial Award for Literary Excellence in 2015 and being featured in the short story collection of the 2015 Sci-Fi Film Festival in Parramatta, Australia. Recent publications include Last Farewell in Fixie Novo's 2020 anthology, using experimental writing techniques, an erotic horror story Pontianak in the international anthology Under Her Black Wings, Women Monsters, and a multi-POV story Confluence in Anak Sastra Literary Magazine. This arts education activist is founder of the online Malaysian Writers Community, established in 2014, and Society, established 2016, which helps over 7,500 writers, poets, editors, bloggers, and literary translators from Malaysia by providing advocacy and support in their craft development and publishing activities. Tina also served as editor for the Malaysian Bar magazine, Praxis, 2010 to 2013, and was an acquisitions editor at the Malaysian branch of an international publishing house from 2016 to 18. With qualifications in law and a Master of Fine Arts in creative writing fiction, Tina is presently working on various novels and short stories. Find out more at www.tina-isaacs.com. Let's hear it from Tina, who will be reading a short story from the Under Her Wings 2020 Women of Horror anthology, published by Kandisha Press. I've had the pleasure of being published with Tina in 2 anthologies before, and I think this is going to be a thrilling story.
Hello there. Thank you so much for joining me for this reading session. My name is Tina Isaacs, and I'm going to read you a short story that I published in the Her Black Wings 2020 Women of Horror anthology. It's published by Kandisha Press. And this is a list of the authors inside. And it is also with a foreword by Brandon Scott, author of Vadao and Slide, Devil Dog Press. Okay, so since it's an international publication, and I believe I'm the only Malaysian author in the set, so I thought I'd contribute something that is a bit, how to say, representative of Southeast Asia. The quintessential woman of horror, I thought, would be the Pontianak. So here we go. This is my story titled Pontianak. The evening I met her, I'd been driving a rented SUV en route to Tanjung Karang, about 50 miles out of Kuala Lumpur. The fortnight's fully immersive homestay experience that awaited me had come at a steal. But my obstinance at traveling without a guide was coming back to bite me in the ass. My GPS was malfunctioning, and I was having to admit begrudgingly the fact that I was somewhat lost. As in completely incognizant of my location, despite the directions that a gas station attendant had helpfully supplied just an hour earlier. On either side of my Ford Ranger were rows and rows of rubber and ripe palm oil trees. Twilight was fast approaching, and the sky was awash with nature's canvas of vibrant blue, orange and red. The rain from half an hour prior left muddy ditches on a narrow track of dirt and gravel. After spending over 3 hours at a truck with no air conditioning, I was all sweaty, my body ached, and the stifling heat was taking a toll on my patience. I know, I should have parted with a few more bucks, an exorbitant 70 ringgit actually, for a better car. I didn't because, for a genuine privilege, I had chosen delayed gratification. To learn things. Just as I was about to succumb to the idea of making a U-turn, I spotted a figure about a mile ahead, walking to the right side of the road. As my truck neared, I could make out a young woman. My headlights illuminated the sway of her derriere, moving with the cadence of a natural, gentle gait. A white gown fell to her dainty feet. Her straight black hair billowed like a smooth curtain down her back. I struck my head and arm out of the window and affixed a warm smile as I drew abreast. Although it was almost dark, I could see she was a hottie. No older than 20, she had enticing almond eyes, a cute button nose on a heart-shaped face. She was lightly tan and had such flawless skin, her lithe body sensually curved in the right places. Did I say lithe? A hint of a smile played on her rosebud lips as she turned towards me. Her ethereal beauty struck me dumb, and I felt a sharp flare of lust enfold my groin. What on earth? I never reacted that quickly to a girl before. Was this what they meant by lust at first sight, I mused? I mean, there's no harm looking, right? Hello there, I prompted, in a non-threatening voice as possible, maintaining a congenial stance. Are you heading to the direction of Kampong Pinang? I doubted the village girl understood a word of English, but was surprised when she responded with a nod and shy smile. We continued this way for a few moments, me in my rumbling truck and she on foot, as I pondered if it was bad form for an American man to give a young village girl a lift in their vehicle. Many Asian villages were pious and quite traditional. Even casual interaction between the opposite sex was frowned upon in these parts. I'd heard of numerous urban legends of weapon-wielding fathers coming after foreigners who flouted their daughters' chastity. As a seasoned traveler, I knew better than to overstep my welcome. But, color me horny, something about this girl made my inner Neanderthal want to roar free. The evening was fast darkening. Glancing towards the long road ahead, I decided to take my chances and pull the vehicle to a stop. Would you like a lift? At first, she tilted her head sideways and seemed to chew over my question. Then before I could blink, she had skipped around the front headlights and opened the passenger door, hopped up onto the seat and pulled the door closed. I grinned back, my pulse aflutter. She smelled lovely. Sweet, potent jasmine and sandalwood. Her alluring aroma swirled and filled the truck cabin. I felt my pants tighten further in response. I swore under my breath. It brought me back to the days of being a 9th grader with a perpetual hard-on for the head cheerleader. Or any cheerleader for that matter. I raised my hand from its perch on the windowsill and decided to offer a safe wave. Hi, I'm Jimmy. You? I inquired, fighting the dryness in my throat. The nymph just smiled, looked down at her lap. In the semi-darkness, illuminated by the dashboard panel lighting, I caught adorable dimples peeking out at me. It was only when she turned to face the road that I saw that slight mar in her beauty. Her right cheek bore a deep scar about 2 inches long, from the tip of her lips to the bottom of her chin. It was an old heel scar, but the injury must have been serious at some point. Still, it did nothing to diminish her overall attractiveness. If at all, I remember thinking it just made her more human. She was a petty, timid thing, and I was enraptured, body and mind. I put the truck into gear and rumbled on, the beautiful young woman riding shotgun beside me. Once the vehicle resumed its momentum, I couldn't help but throw a quick glance at her body. Oh wow. I blinked, realizing she wasn't wearing a bra under that gauzy white dress. Her nipples were taut and straining against the material. My pulse quickened. Swallowing the watermelon-sized lump in my throat, I shifted in my seat and steadfastly kept my gaze ahead, concentrating on the truck motion at a loss for words. The interior was tense with anticipation. From outside, the sound of crickets and forest animals accompanied us, while her captivating fragrance tickled my nose. As I continued to drive, I slowly took my right hand away from the steering and adjusted my boner. We couldn't have traveled for more than 2 miles before I was surprised to feel her small hand clasp my thigh. An electric zing raced through my body and I jerked in my seat, my left leg slamming on the brakes in reflex. We were both thrown forward for a moment. The engine instantly stalled and the vehicle spluttered to a resounding stop. I spluttered an apology, and as I fumbled with the keys, but the fucking thing wouldn't cooperate. The minx merely threw back her head and released a carefree laugh, a pleasant tinkling sound, as if I hadn't almost crashed us into a ditch. It was infectious and I couldn't help but join her. When we quietened down, I looked at her expectantly, drawn to those pink lips. They looked downright edible. Imagine my surprise when she shifted closer towards me. I stilled and swallowed hard, my eyes zeroing on her long nails that were straying too close, a tad too close, to the jackpot. All rational thought flew out the window. My blood boiled with lust. The strain in my pants was becoming painful. Then, the mysterious girl leaned over. I was at a tipping point when the blaring of a vehicle horn sounded behind me. Fuck that, I huffed, pivoting in my seat to glare at the lorry signaling to overtake us. By the time I turned back, I was taken aback and, let's face it, downright crestfallen to see that the girl had opened the passenger door and popped out. Without so much as a backward glance, she disappeared into a path amongst the bushes. A second blare sounded as the lorry completed its overtaking. I rushed out and flipped the driver the bird, and then ran around the front of the truck. My eyes searched frantically into the semi-darkness for the escaped girl, but I couldn't make out the path she'd taken. Damn it, I shouted my frustration to the dust skyline. Feeling foolishly dejected, my gaze settled on my stupid truck, blocking the middle of the road, and I knew I had no other option than to continue my journey alone. I drove on with heavy thoughts, hardly cognizant of the road ahead, although I was now half a day behind schedule and hopelessly lost. Thankfully, 10 minutes later, I spotted a signboard marking the entry into Kampong Pinang. If you'd like to find out more about what happens to our Jimmy and the mysterious girl, does he get to meet up with her later? Don't forget to get yourself a copy of the Under Her Black Wings Anthology 2020 Women of Horror, published by Kandisha Press. As I said earlier, these are the authors that are featured in this book. It's available on Amazon and also as an ebook. I hope you enjoyed everything and enjoyed my read. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.
Those of you who know me know that I'm a musician too. I really enjoy playing live and hearing live music. We have a wonderful musical treat for you today. Zulkifli Ramli is a gambus player from Kuala Lumpur. He plays with a local traditional Malay folk ensemble, the Wangga Sakti. The Wangga Sakti is in the midst of releasing a new album titled Arus Deras. The album is now open for pre-order at the price of RM50. Let's put our hands together and welcome Zulkifli. Our next guest refers to himself as a memory smuggler. Born in France, Serge Jardin is married to a Malaccan, a geographer and historian by training. He has been in love with Malaysia for more than 30 years, where he worked as a tour leader, tourist guide, travel agent, and finally as a hotelier. His first book was Revers Malacca, from the writings of travelers. With Sylvie Radeler, he wrote Malaisie, Un certain regard, or Looking at Another Angle. And with the photographer Tam Zi Ho, he wrote Malacca Style, about art, craft, and design. He's also published Langkawi Style, with photography by H. Tan and text by J. Bouchot. The French contribution to Malaysia and Malaccan history are his main interests. His latest effort includes Diary of a French Missionary, Penang during the Japanese occupation, A Fortuitous Encounter. And now he's working on the translation of the account of a VOC, mercenary, in Malacca. Serge is an accidental author, lecturer, publisher, and translator. He lives in Old Malacca. Alors, sans plus attendre, joignez-vous à moi pour accueillir Serge. So without further delay, let's welcome Serge.
Bonjour. What is it about? It is the translation of the diary kept by Father Marcel Roux, superior of the Collège Général during the Japanese occupation. The Collège Général has trained the Asian Catholic priests for 3 centuries. It was founded by the Society of Foreign Mission of Paris. It was the oldest French institution in Malaya, and possibly Malaya's greatest contribution to Asia's network of knowledge. For more than 2 centuries, it was based in Penang, in Pulau Tikus, with a country house named Mayofil in Tanjung Bunga, where there is still a Catholic seminary today. I choose at the beginning of the diary, in the year 1941, the month of December, which begins quite routinely but ends in chaos. On the first, no entry. Second, ordination of 4 deacons. Third, ordination of 5 priests, 2 from Malacca, 3 from Bangkok. Fourth, departure of Lambert from Malacca, a layman first year of philosophy. Fifth, abrupt departure of the community to Mayofil because of the imminent danger of hostilities with Japan. A state of emergency was declared a few days ago with general mobilization. Departure of 4 students from Bangkok and 1 student from Laos. In fact, these students took the last train from Penang to Siam. 6. The war with Japan appearing imminent, everything has been prepared in Mayofil for this eventuality. 7. Around 10 p.m., the battery of the island have discharged a few rounds of gunfire. There were no blackout that night in Penang. 8. At the beginning of the community mass, we hear the Japanese air raid on Sungai Petani, where we see a thick smoke rising. We say, this time it is for real. A few small attacks follow one another, on Butterwolf and on the Bayan Lepas airfield. From this day onwards, blackout every night. 9 and 10. Repeated alert. Fighting between Japs and English fighters over Butterwolf. In town, nobody cares about danger. The people gather on Esplanade to see the dogfight between planes. The life in Mayofil continues as usual, the races to the shelter, during the alert, the walk and the blackout. We get up at the usual time, we soup at 6, followed by rosary and evening prayer at 7, then bed at 9. A watch is organized. The students share the night between 3 groups of 3. 11. Black Day for Malaya. English naval disaster on the East Coast. Prince of Wales and Ripples sunk. A little after 9 a.m., the city of Penang is seriously bombarded by air. Bombs fall on Love Lane and on Saint Xavier Institution Padang near the Coven, among other places. The Jap machine gun the street. The Mercantile Bank is hit by a bomb. The stained glass window of the Assumption Church are shattered. The priest house is terribly rattled and becomes dangerous to inhabit. Other alerts at the beginning of the afternoon. The Chorasta market has been hit, as well as the houses on Stilt in the port, and we are talking about 200 killed. In evening, from Mayofield, we see big fire in the city. 600 European women and children evacuated from Penang. 12. No more bread. Bakery employees having fled. Between 9 a.m. and 12 noon, successive raids. No bombs at Pulau Tikus. The defense, with anti-aircraft battery, almost absent at the beginning, start to be organized and start to fire back. 13. Several raids during the day. Less damage this time. A Christian died on the estate. No way to transport him to the cemetery. He's buried near the Malay cemetery. 14. Everything is quiet until lunch at noon. At this moment, a big Japanese formation appears, greeted with cannon shot. The formation turned to another direction. In town, we are just starting to get organized, but until now, there is the looting, which is aloo for food. In Tanjung Tokong, the police have disappeared, and the inhabitants stop the vehicle coming from town and take all the goods they can find. 15. The shooting gets closer in Kedah. The brothers who were up in the hill are ordered to come down because we fear an attack by paratroopers and we don't want them to get stranded. In the morning, several alerts. In the evening, the island's gun shoot at the Japanese who are already closing in. 16. The Japanese are said to be in the south of Kedah. It is the beginning of a quiet day. No air raid alert. In the evening, it is said that Penang was declared an open city by the English, likewise Hong Kong. Everywhere we hear explosion from the destruction which the English are carrying out before leaving. No more electric power. The Penang Gazette publisher, Mr. Saranawa Mutu, take charge, waiting for the arrival of the Japanese. Catholic Eurasian jockey Ivan Alan and 2 Japanese civilians, formerly interned but since released, leave by boat for Sungai Petani to contact the Japanese command. 17. In the morning, many people return to town, believing the danger to be over. The students try to go fishing. Around 11 a.m., a strong Japanese air force bombarded the Chulia Street area. Many are killed, including the boy and the gardener of Father Sway in the latter's car, which is burned. Again, the exodus of those who had returned to town. It is said that the Japanese bombed again because the British flag had not been replaced by a white flag. 18. The looting in town continued today. Good fishing by the student in the evening. The supply of food is not bad. Japanese troops are expected to arrive in town from one moment to the next. But around 10 a.m., a Japanese air raid is conducted on the city. During the midday rest, the planes come around again. Guards were formed by the government committee to stop the looting. 19. Passes are required to transport possession from the town to the countryside. In Bagan Jamal, belonging to those who don't have a pass are searched. Robbery continues all around Mayofield, the Penang Swimming Club, Dr. McKern House, the new Springtide Hotel, all are looted. In evening, it is said that the Japanese arrive in town, 300 to 500 soldiers. 20th, quiet morning, the students go fishing. A printed sheet of the Penang Service Committee describes the fall of Hong Kong and gives us some news of the world. The battle zone in Malaya should be now on the Krian River. 21st, order to Europeans not to leave their home. The Japanese authority will see them at home. 22nd, the students go fishing. We walk in a vegetable garden under the direction of Father Denarier. 23rd, we buy chicken and we start a hen house. Good fishing in the morning. Supply is sufficient. The interdiction made to Europeans not to leave their home is renewed. The college car is requisitioned, and guns and daggers must be delivered before the 25th, subject to death penalty. 24. Christmas Eve. We do some preparation for Christmas. We continue the walk in the garden and for the hen house. In the evening at 5 p.m. procession of the crib. A bit like what we used to do after supper on Christmas Eve. Nothing at night. 25th, Christmas Day. About 30 Christians come to the Mass at 8 a.m. Morning is quiet. We know nothing about what is happening on the peninsula or in the rest of the world. Life is only slowly returning to town where dirt and strange prevail. We bought 5 goats and 3 kids for $120 and start rearing goats. Supply is enough. We learned that English prisoners are cleaning the town and repairing telephone communication. It is said that about 1,500 people were killed in Penang during the bombing. We can find bread again in town. Thank you very much.
Jaymee Goh is a writer, reviewer, editor, and essayist of science fiction and fantasy. Her work has been published in a number of science fiction and fantasy magazines and anthologies. She wrote the blog Silver Goggles, an exploration of post-colonial theory through steampunk, and has contributed to Tor.com, Racialicious.com, and Beyond Victoriana. She graduated from the Clarion Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Workshop in 2016 and received her PhD in Comparative Literature from the University of California, Riverside, where she dissertated on steampunk and whiteness. She's an editor for Tachion Publications. Today, she'll be reading from the first chapter of her fantasy novel.
Hi, this is Jaymee Goh. Thank you, Sharon, for having me part of this reading. And thank you, Ivy, for introducing me. Thank you, May, for pulling me in for this session. I'm going to be reading the first chapter of a novel that I've been writing. And it's about a girl who wakes up in the world of her favorite fantasy murder mystery web novel, because we're all about those right now, right? And she wakes up as this character who, well, you're going to find out. On Lily Wang's first day in Kirani, she had woken up with a bloody arm, realized she was not in the hospital where she ought to be, looked in the mirror, and discovered she was not the person she ought to be. Like any reasonable person, she panicked and tried to throw herself screaming out the window. The weirdness of being in a body that did not belong to her and the phantom pains that lanced through her senses had been so overwhelming that she had thought if she did, then the impact would wake her in her original world and original body. Amid the shouts of the household staff, the cries of her so-called mother, and the continued dribbling of blood down her arm, Lily had blacked out before she could successfully jump off. On the second day, the family doctor had returned, disconcerted at her suicide attempts, more so when she admitted she couldn't remember cutting her arm. She was anemic from blood loss, nothing that a few days of bed rest couldn't heal. Her mother had tried to call in a divine healer to fix the unsightly line on her arm, but the effort did not take. The priest scolded Lily soundly for attempting suicide, that it was her fault somehow, that her soul was incapable of receiving divine energy now, and she would have to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. Which Lily was willing to do, except she still didn't understand how she got here, because her last memory before waking up in this world was falling off the 55th floor. So she had begged her so-called mother to call in more faith-based healers and mental asylum doctors to examine her and figure out why she couldn't remember anything, if perhaps she had been possessed by something. This all took about a week, because Baroness Katina Rian had hoped this was merely a fit of pique and that Lilibet's memory would return. The brain doctors couldn't see anything physically wrong with her. The faith healers were in agreement that her attempted suicide must have had something to do with her missing memories. Exorcism did not work. Since her soul was out of reach for divine energy for healing anyway, it was also out of reach for ousting. She couldn't decide if that was a good thing. She wasn't a demon, was she? Lily played the invalid as much as she could, moving unsurely, even though really what she wanted to do was pull on some shorts and go for a sprint somewhere. Out of sight, she exercised her body as she could, cardio reps and calisthenics, anything to get control of her new body in its weakened state. Was it her body? Was it Lilibet Rian's body? Was the real Lilibet somewhere out there, trapped in Lily Wang's hospitalized body, maybe? Where was the real Lilibet Rian anyway, and why did the name sound so familiar? In the second week of being in Lilibet Rian's body, Lily Wang read a lot of books. She had to keep her mind busy somehow, because at night she had nightmares of plunging to her death and jerking herself awake. She also needed to understand this world and this country. Her country had been a faux democracy. Lily found that there was something she could naturally do in this world. She could read the common continental language and the Qurani variant. Her body knew how to wear the many layered skirts without tripping. Muscle memory and semantic memory, but no episodic memory. She had no idea when her little sister Miranelle had been born, what Lilibet had been like as a child, how long her personal maid Paul had been working for the household, and other such things that would have given her an understanding of what role she was meant to be playing. Her new mother, Lilibet's mother, soothingly answered any such questions, probably thinking that it would jog the memory. It would not. The more Lily looked into the mirror, the less alienated she felt by her reflection. Her eyes and hair were the same color as before, at least. Lilibet and Lily were of a similar height and had the same general body shape. The fineness and indeterminate ethnicity of Lilibet's speeches perturbed Lily, but perhaps her soul had cast itself into the first available body that was as similar to her old one as much as possible. She also needed to figure out just who Lilibet Rian was. The name was familiar. The person was not. Lilibet had had few friends. There was little correspondence between her and anyone else. Lily had found some letters from childhood acquaintances who had moved away after marriage. She wrote to them, saying she had had an illness which left her memory blank, and she was trying to recover ties as a result, so would they share some memory of her? There were several letters from an extremely familiar name, Serge Jardin, all the way from the Halian Seminary in the southeast peninsula of the country. The letters contained very little personal history. Letters relating everyday activities, the weather, the occasional mention of a festival. No reference to things they might have done together. No reminiscing. No nostalgia. It was all very perfunctory. Lily wondered what had happened to their earlier letters, because Lilibet had not kept them, apparently. Now, Serene Jardin was the name of a murder mystery web novel heroine that Lily had admired before she woke up in this weird world. Lily wondered whether this Serene was anything like the Serene she had read about as she wrote a letter about her memory loss, asking Serene if any of her letters had been particularly melancholy. Lily turned to Paul, Lilibet's personal maid, for answers on why Lilibet would have committed suicide, but the maid was not very forthcoming. I just don't think it's my place to say, miss, she insisted. If you don't say, then I won't know. And if I don't know, then whatever it is I heard, I will hear again, and I will have no defense. I want to hear about it from someone I trust, not some stranger. The maid reddened. I don't rightly know, miss. But you know something. Lily frowned at Paul, who had that look that Lily was beginning to realize was confusion at how differently the house's first miss was acting from before. Well, but you must promise you mustn't touch anything harmful to yourself after this. I swear. A little after your debut, you had gone to a tea party, and you came home crying, upset. You'd always been quiet, miss, but after that you were in despair. And Lily waited pointedly. Because of that fortune teller, miss, she said you were starless, and people were so unbelievably rude to you about it. It's not your fault, miss. Lots of people are starless. I told you so. Baffling, but a bit more of an answer than nothing. It was 3 weeks before the antagonist of Lilibet's story showed up. Lily had been reading pamphlets written by Aidan Kurani, the king, when Paul came rushing in. Miss, we have to get you ready, she said breathlessly. Why? He's here. Who? Paul clapped her hands over her mouth, clearly recalling that her mistress had lost her entire memory. Your fiancé, miss. I have a fiancé? Someone really should have mentioned this before. Katina had hinted that there was someone important in Lilibet's life who did not live in the Rian household, but never said outright who it was, and Lily had not thought much about it. Paul bobbed her head. Markin Belsis. His family proposed this marriage some time ago. You were so thrilled. Lily finally remembered why Lilibet Rian's name sounded so familiar. If Sereny Jurin had been the heroine of the web serial, Markin Belsis had been an antagonist that Sereny investigated, her first murder mystery case. His alleged crime? The murder of Sereny's best friend, Lilibet Rian. That's that. Thank you for listening.
Well, that completes the readings for July 2021. I hope you've enjoyed the interesting and diverse lineup. Please join us again next month. This is Ivy Ngeow signing off. And on behalf of Sharon Barker and the authors, thank you very much for listening and watching. See you next time. Bye.